Welcome everyone. If we could please stand and we all final. One nation.
Dr. Katachu.
Here.
Dr. Marks. Mr. Gordon. Dr. Gursky. Here. Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mrs. Fetch.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Kirsch.
Here.
Mrs. Edney.
Here. It's time to have a motion to approve the minutes from May 27th. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to our tax list.
Nothing to report tonight. We did have our meeting in Mr. Kreider's, beginning to make some progress with his meeting.
Thank you. Jim Harness, do you have anything to say? How do you work this one?
Not much. It was the meeting took place last Wednesday. It was a typical meeting with a lot of budget of 2 months in, but nothing particularly for.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other board announcements? None.
The enrollment report we now have in total in all buildings, including our pre-K Head Start, we have 2,404 students, which is remaining fairly steady at this time. I just want to say thank you. We've done 4 different reopening. Well, we did 2 reopening, actually 3 reopening surveys. One for the faculty and staff, one for the parents, and another one regarding transportation for the parents. So I wanted to thank the community, the families that did respond. That information is going to be used in helping us make decisions and leading us in a way that hopefully will make the best decision on the way to reopen, given the various situations that we're facing right now. So I definitely appreciate all that have corresponded. You know, the teachers almost 100% corresponded, so that was really exciting to see. Parents, there were almost 1,000 families represented. So that means we've got some really good information to dissect. I want to remind people that we're still doing our summer food distribution. Meal pickup is at Danville Middle School on Mondays and Thursdays from 11 to 1. The location is at the rear of the middle school, and we're giving out enough breakfast and lunches provided to cover until the next distribution day, including weekends. In addition, family food boxes are being handed out by the Central Pennsylvania Food Service or Food Bank, and they're distributed on Mondays. So there's an opportunity for the families in the community to be able to have some lunches and breakfast for their children and additional food for their families. Another thank you that I'd like to do is to publicly thank our faculty, our maintenance, custodial crews, our support staff, office staff, all those people who helped keep the district running, either from their homes or online with Google Meet for the student or Google Classroom for the students, Google Meet for our various sessions when we did anything in the midst of the pandemic. Everyone was prepared to step up, do what they needed to do. We have an amazing group of employees at Danville Area School District, and I just want to publicly thank them all. The other subject I have here is grant funding. Mrs. Healy and I are working on 2 different grants at this time. They're due on the 30th of June. One is the CARES Act, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Under the CARES Act, we as a district are assigned to receive $385,239. And there's a PCCD grant, which is the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and it's called the COVID School Health and Safety Grant. And on that, after we complete it and it's approved, we should be receiving approximately $212,465. Okay, so we're moving right along. We continue to work on relocation or reopening, and you'll be seeing some presentation on some of the process and procedures we're going through right now. Thank you.
At this time, do we have any public comment regarding to any agenda items? No public comment. We will move on. Tonight we have Amy Willoughby giving a presentation. Pardon me? No, I thought you were welcome.
So he's going to display the presentation in order for it to work. It's probably being live streamed. And can everyone hear me okay? All right. So tonight I'm going to present to you a little bit of the information that we got from our PACE results, and then also talk a little bit about social emotional learning and what's to come in our district. So the PACE survey is the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, and it has been conducted in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania since 1989. It is a fully funded program that is funded by the PA Commission on Crime and Delinquency, the PA Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, and the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. The purpose of the PACE is to look at the root problems that causes antisocial behaviors. Not only the rate at which they occur, which is typically our discipline data, we look at the rate at which they're occurring, not the problems that lead to the behavior. So this means looking at community, school, family dynamics, as well as student perception on antisocial behaviors. The data from this survey is meant to identify and then address the reasons behind the behavior, and it allows us as a district to be more proactive in helping students. So the PACE is distributed to students in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. Across Pennsylvania, 60% of eligible schools participated in the 2019 PACE. The Danville Area School District had a modified participation rate based on the number of valid student surveys and those who participated. So this was determined by using a 5-point validity check to ensure the highest level of confidence in our survey results. Our modified participation rate was 78.6%. Statewide, there were 54.2%, so we did very well. Only 5 of our surveys were found invalid and were not included in this survey data. Our demographics, I wasn't going to talk too much about this. In your packets, it's found on page 8, and it goes into some detail, but I didn't want to take up too much time on demographic data. But it was nice to see that our 10th grade was the best represented grade level with 84 participants. All right, so here we have just some snapshots of the most prevalent data points, things that we have looked at as a district already and that we would like to address again as a whole. So when looking at this data, they talk about highest lifetime usage rate. And what that means is that students have at least tried a substance under these categories at least one time over the course of their lifetime. The 30-day refers to within 30 days of the survey date. So within these survey results, there is a plethora of information. We will look at the historical data from previous PAYS surveys and determine community trends and common trends among our students in order to come up with what will best help our students and be proactive. And as you can see, some of our concerns here are the highest lifetime usage is 37.8% and it's alcohol consumption. And that is typical across the state. Not that we want to see that, but those levels or those percentages are typical across the board. The next data points that were discussed in the report were the commitment to school and then things regarding bullying. So 300 of our students report that they are learning important information that they will use for the rest of their lives. Nearly 50% of our students report that they're experiencing meaningful activities at school and that they find enjoyment when they attend school. However, the number of students in this sample that reported being bullied was 135 students out of the 552 surveyed. The next area that was looked at was the social emotional health. Our mental health concerns and stressful events that students encounter in their everyday life. So 161 students reported that they feel as though they are no good at all. 177 students reported that they feel depressed on most school days. And 71 of our students reported that they seriously considered suicide. That is roughly 18 students per grade level represented. So overall, student perception of their parental disapproval of alcohol use, drug use, tobacco use is 90%. So students know that it's wrong, or that their parents have instilled good morals, but these risk-taking behaviors still occur. So the data also suggests that 57% of students don't think that they would get caught if they were drinking alcohol. So the health of Danville High School, Danville Area School District, I was referring to high school. According to the data in this survey, our highest risk factors are low commitment to school, perceived risk of drug use, low neighborhood attachment. But the highest protective factors include family attachment, belief in moral order, and family opportunities for pro-social involvement. So it is worth noting that 88% of our students in this sample reported that they are involved in at least one pro-social activity. So what that means is they are in band or club, sports, or some other activity. 64% of that 88 participate in school-sponsored activities, and 49.7 participate with their families. So how are we going to use this data? Now, I gave you a very quick snapshot of what is in that very large report, and we will be using all of the data to determine how to move forward with our social emotional learning. But to start, we are going to look at a program called Too Good for Drugs that Geisinger has available. We actually just call it the Too Good program because when we add the 4 drugs, it turns people up a little bit. However, in this program, it does address many pro-social activities. So, our professional development days in August, Geisinger will be introducing the program to a select group of staff, including guidance, intervention specialists, and the health department. And the state, so Smart Futures is our 339 component, and that is K to 12. The state has set forth new requirements within 339 plan. So these outline social emotional learning guidelines. So we plan to look at Smart Futures lessons, K to 12, and map the curriculum accordingly. We did just receive a summary of the Smart Futures activities by grade level, so this will begin to happen very shortly with guidance and intervention. So ultimately, the goal of looking at all of this data and looking at social emotional learning options is to help our students stay safe and healthy and grow within our community.
Amy, would you just explain Act 339, please?
Sure. So Act 339 is our career readiness. And it is an initiative that is, that is set forth by the state to prepare students for the world, college and career readiness. So we already have, and Mr. Johns oversees that. He already has the Smart Futures set up K-12. And what Smart Futures has done is now taken what the state is saying, we need to incorporate the social emotional piece to the career readiness as well. So we're going to make sure that it's all mapped as we deem fit. And if there are things missing, we can address that with hopefully the Too Good program that Geisinger is providing. And if not, we will look elsewhere.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
And what's low commitment?
I'm sorry, the low commitment to school?
What do that mean?
So, and I should have brought my packet, but it is defined very well in the booklet that was presented. But low commitment to school is they don't feel value in school. They're not committed to, attending regularly, or they just don't feel as though they are valued.
So I have a comment. First thing, thank you for bringing this.
Yeah, thank you.
You did a nice job. I think it's important that we're working on the two good stuff curriculum with Designations. That's a great stuff. And I do appreciate that the social and learning program incorporated the chapter curriculum to the chapter 339. What's alarming to me to hear this data as both a parent and a board member is that not only are 30% of parents providing alcohol, which is stunning to me, but I also am concerned with the 25% of students experiencing bullying and 32% of those students being upset, and 13% contemplating suicide. And I think for me that speaks to something larger than just the SEL programming, and it speaks to school culture. And so I don't know if in our next curriculum committee meeting that we have, we can talk about how school culture and prevention of pieces like this intervention could play into the reopening, because it's so really different maybe than it does now. And so I appreciate the data, I appreciate the information. I just would like to see this circle back sort of discussion when we talk outside of the 339 and 2%, and maybe what we can do long term for school culture and to really try to address that in different learning formats.
Thank you.
I have one more question. With regard to the future based on this data set, so our population is 6, 8, 10th and 12th graders. So now do we track them again, like every 2 years and compare it? Like how do we have some barometer of the effects of the programs that we're going to institute, the action plans, and see how it affects this pool, this population?
So we actually have the historical data from 2015. This survey is offered every odd year, as they put it, it's every other year. So we do have the 2015 data. And when I referenced historical data, that's what I was referencing. I didn't include it in this PowerPoint because I would have been here way longer than you all would like to hear me talk, I'm sure. So I can get you that historical information. And it is presented in this packet, in this booklet. So, yes, I mean, we will look at that, and then in 2021, we can reassess by reallocating and redistributing the case.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Christine, are you trying to talk?
Yeah.
I was saying that I can't hear, so I was just asking if board members could please turn on their mics when they speak.
Thank you, Amy.
At this time, the leadership team will discuss reopening of schools.
All right, I'm gonna stay right here because of the mic. That makes it a lot easier. My voice went very better. What we have done is we have put together a presentation to let people know the processes we're going through and the considerations that we now have to focus on in order to look at options for reopening. This by no means is a plan. It is just preparation and information for the board members and the community. So my little subtitle is preparing for the unknown because it is very unknown and it changes daily. I want to say that classroom learning provides necessary opportunities for our students to learn, socialize, and grow. Benefits of in-person instruction can't be overstated, but again, we now need to put health, safety, and reasonableness all in play before we come up with a plan. What we've done is we've gathered information. We've had parent surveys of distance learning, and then also I did another one regarding reopening. We did a teacher survey and currently have a transportation survey open. I attend IU superintendent team meetings sometimes twice a week. We have multiple meetings. We meet with legislators. We meet with various other stakeholders. Just this past week, we met with health providers, one from EVAN and two from Geisinger, to help us work through these processes. Geisinger now says they are working on a toolkit that should be helping us with this process as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Additionally, we have what PDE has given us as far as a reopening template, health and safety template. And as of today, I got another email that we have some more guidance and some more specifics. I got that at 4:54, so I'm sorry I haven't gotten to read it yet, but we do get emails and things every day. Also, I'd like to thank Mr. Beard and his legal group because they regularly are sending out what they call fine alerts, and all the pertinent information are those. I attend PASA meetings, I watch PSBA webinars, and I can go on and various things that we've all participated in. If you look at the graphic, this is just from one of the parent surveys, is that what is your comfort level? And when you look at it, nearly 30% of the group said they're very comfortable with the students returning to school in August, which was 281 parents. There were at 27, almost 28% said they were somewhat comfortable, which was 262 parents. So you can see we're well over 500 parents in the survey are very comfortable or somewhat comfortable with their child returning to the classroom. There are some that were uncomfortable at 10%, and then that 14% somewhat uncomfortable. We had several, 171, who said they were waiting to see, and that was out of 949 people who answered the survey. The next question was that I had for them was, which of the following do you prefer for your children to return to school? They had traditional face-to-face, virtual learning with Danville school district teachers, outside cyber charter schools, homeschooling, a combination of both, not sure, and then others were some comments that people made. Most of those were waiting to see and not sure exactly what they wanted. So face-to-face was almost 52%, with 490 parents saying they wanted their kids back in school face-to-face. Virtual with the Danville teachers was almost 8% at 72 parents. Outside charter, cyber charter were only 13, and homeschooling was 11. So the combination of in-person and virtual was a total of 18.31. So, I read that wrong. Was about 70% there. So that's good news too. The other little thing was about they're wearing masks. We asked the parents if you would be sending your kids back to school if it was required that they wear masks. And the majority said that they would, it was likely that they would, it was over 60%, and then the rest they were unlikely to do that. Now, together as teams, we have done a lot of action planning. We have the administrative team doing planning. We have central office, which would be Bobby, Ken, and I, doing some planning and looking at things as well, especially when it comes to the health and safety and the cleanliness and what we need to do for the buildings. We had each building assign a group of teachers, ask for a group of volunteer teachers and other staff to participate in a building level pandemic team. So we have really went a long way to try and plan for this thing. We have, we're making applications to the various grants so that we can address some of the financial issues that are going to come up with this. We've worked on the resocialization of the athletics, which we passed last week. I do want to say that this is something that is fluid and we're going to always be monitoring. We had meetings with Hilliard, which is our janitorial supplies service, and they gave us training actually on analyzing and sanitizing and disinfectants, the differences and how it can be used and what's best in our current circumstances. We recently had a meeting with the bus contractors to discuss how they would go ahead and clean their buses. We have worked out a way to the district to help them purchase the correct materials. We are not paying for them, they are, but at least we've given them guidance on what cleaning fluids they should be using to best disinfect the buses, and we're requiring that to be done after the morning run and after the afternoon run, so that they are done twice a day. And then we have 100 families that have reported to us that they do not have reliable internet. So that is being looked at to purchase the appropriate hotspots, or what we call MiFis, so that we have that in case we need to be using those for the various families. So PDE has given us guidance for the green phase. Now they also have one for the yellow phase, which we would then incorporate appropriately as well. We're planning for various levels. There are two pieces to these guidance. There's one that is a must. These are the things that you must do in order to have the health and safety plan for PDE approval. The other is may. These are the things that you know, are recommended, but they're not required. So under the must, there's a pandemic coordinator, and I will lead that, but I am not doing that solely. I have assigned a group of individuals that will participate as a team, and we'll work together. We must take steps to protect children and staff at higher risk. And one of my surveys, I did ask for the staff who did feel they had higher risk or may have something that would prevent them from coming back into the building to teach. And I had about 20 people, I think it was, that were in that category. So we'll be identifying those people and making sure that we're addressing those situations appropriately. We need to post signs to promote protective measures, and honestly, we had done that immediately in February when things started to ramp up a little bit. We got signs from CDE. We'll be getting more signs and make sure they're out there regularly. Create procedures for cleaning, disinfecting, ventilating all the learning spaces. We'll have procedures for large group areas like the cafeteria or the gymnasium. We're going to have protocols for activities at recess and physical education. These things have been discussed, you know, as far as what equipment we'll have to section off so they can't use it, how we can provide a PE curriculum and adjust that so that we aren't having too many things being touched and not being able to clean them or sanitize from one class to the next. We're training all the faculty and staff on the implementation of the plan. And my hope is to work with the staff on an upfront and maybe pull some of our professional days from the calendar and put it to the beginning of the school year so that then we can have those things done. And I'm assured that people are aware and we don't have to wait part-time through the year, that they'll be comfortable starting themselves. And then of course we have to keep a system of communication. Under the May side are guidelines for hygiene practices for faculty and staff, and I can honestly say we expect that will be incorporated and be, in our plan a must. Guidelines for face coverings, protocols for classroom social distancing. 6 feet is the ideal. At this time, I'm seeing different reports from 3 to 6 feet. Bucks County Department of Health recently put out a guidelines for their group, their school districts, and they're saying 3 feet, which is pretty narrow. But we're going to work at trying to be 6 feet as much as possible. Guidelines for use for communal spaces, procedures for limiting sharing of materials by students, having their own little boxes. We're working on what we will do for the art departments, so that because they do share so much. Transportation schedules and seating on the buses. To be perfectly honest with you, the number of students we have being transported is extreme, and there is no feasible way that we can go down to students in every other seat. The potential is probably 2 to a seat at the most, so minimize the numbers, but it is a concern we're trying to work through. Processes for communication and coordination with the child care facilities in the area, and then a revised hours of operation or a modified calendar if it becomes necessary. And that's all things that we may do, but it is not a must. When you look at this, there are 4 levels of opening designations, and I'll be going through those, so I'm not going to read it over. So although we might choose one option when we open school, it does not mean that it won't be something different in the future, given what happens or what, maybe numbers go way up as far as cases, then we have to reconsider what we're doing. So whatever we start with does not mean is the only thing we will do for the entire pandemic situation. We will keep our options open, and any final determinations are going to be taking account of what the state, the federal government, and the CDC guidelines would get to us. I'm also working with emergency management at Geisinger and the county level to try and get more information and have better planning. This got a little small, sorry about this. This is the focus areas that we've been working on. We were looking at safe operations, our teaching and learning. We want to make sure we are having our aligned instruction and that it's still engaging regardless of what method we have to choose. We want equity and access so that any needed resources and support are out there for all buildings. We want behavioral health. We've worked on that with our intervention specialists. We've also been in communication with Concern and CMSU about services that they might be able to provide for us as well. In informed flexibility, there's options. We have to keep that in our mind. And communication, so we need to be ongoing and frequent communication with the families, and I do myself personally have to improve that. I know that, so I will work on that personally. And we just want to make sure that we're looking at all our best practices with transportation, food service, all the other supplemental things that are happening in schools. So in all phases, these are the things that we're going to consider. Anything that we consider, Danville staff and students are at the heart of our decision making. The ultimate goal is to return our students to the classrooms, connecting daily with their teachers. We need to emphasize flexibility and compassion while establishing the procedures and protocols to ensure a quality educational experience in these uncertain times. So you can look at those and see the various things that we are going to be looking at. Most of this addresses what's on the must list. Front-loading professional development, looking at the school calendar to see if what changes, and many of the things I've already mentioned. One of the things I did mention is that we're looking at that the traffic in the hallways and the stairways are one way when it's possible. It might mean we have to have half of the hallway one way and half the other way, depending on the configuration of the building. But we're looking to make sure that there isn't a lot of exchange in those areas. So total reopening. Yes. It's that, so that students aren't sharing all the crayons, like we don't have buckets in the middle of the table anymore. Each student will have their own little box. Okay, so they're not sharing everything, especially in the lower levels. You're welcome. Good question. Total reopening. Now this is where we would reopen in all the students' traditional school, but we always have to keep in mind that there are family choice. And one of the concerns that I have is that we want to make sure we're providing what is necessary for each family to feel safe and comfortable and for their child to get the best learning environment. And in some cases, families are not going to be comfortable, or they have a child who has some condition that they're not able to come into the building at this time. We want to make sure that we're offering a distance learning platform. We're talking about a variety of ways. The one thing we keep in mind is we want something where they will be interacting with Danville area school district teachers. It won't be a stranger on the computer of some far off land. In that way, then when it's time, they're looking at they're going through our curriculum, what our expectations are, and when the opportunity arises and they're able to return, they'll be returning in a way that it's fluid, and they can just step back in and feel comfortable and not be missing a beat, hopefully. All our buildings, and this would be opened every day, okay, unless something happens and we have to change it. And we're going to have more liberal arrival times because of the transportation pieces that we're looking at, and a more liberal absenteeism because we may have students who have to be out for several days, or staff who have to be out for several days. So we really have to keep in mind what the needs of the individual are and not necessarily hold to a real tight rule. On a scaffolding approach, and I gave you a little cartoon there, and what it shows you is there's this little kiddo and this point, and he gets straight up to the top, and there's no steps. Where the other one, if you look at the scaffolding, there's supports and ways for them to get up there a bit at a time. That's what the scaffold reopening is when we have students who want to go distance learning, we have others that are a totally reopening option for school. What we need to do is put levels in place so that when it comes to the end and when everything is able to be reopened, everybody has reached that point in a way that no one suffers educationally. And our original plan with this at the moment, again, nothing is solid. The elementary would be open every day. We're very aware that parents need, rely on us in many ways for childcare. We're aware that the little ones need their socialization. It's very important. And we have methods that we're looking at that we'll be able to have teachers doing Google Classroom, as well as having classrooms that they're being taught. So it's complicated at the moment, but we're working on it, and I think we can do it. The secondary, we would be open 4 days a week with cyber school 1 day. I really want the teachers to continue to develop their skills in distance learning. We got thrown into it really quickly. A lot of the data that I got back was they were worried about consistency. They were worried about, one student that they had in their home got all kinds of stuff. The other one didn't get as much. We will monitor it much more fully, and we want to make sure that it's happening with fidelity and reasonable effort by everyone. Okay, now blended reopening, it's a little bit of everything. So what it basically entails is we blend traditional methods of instruction with digital instruction for a variety of learning possibilities. And that's part of what we're looking at with that scaffolding as well. We're looking at, we might have an every other day model for the grade levels to minimize the quantity of students. Now it would be group A would come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, group B would be Tuesday, Thursday, and then alternate weeks. We'd use Google Suite for the online instruction and virtual meetings, and the students would all have a device. That's another item that we're working on financially with the grants, is to make sure that every student would have a Chromebook accessible for them to take home if necessary. And we're going to minimize, this would minimize students using transportation because half of the students would be coming at a time. And then, of course, we will make a daily lunch available. So if Group A comes on Monday and they're not coming back till Wednesday, we would give them their meals in a bag for Tuesday. So we're making sure we're covering the whole child and not just bits and pieces. And then total remote is what we had to go to in March with students learning at home totally online. Again, we want to make sure that we're doing this well, and that's why we want to continue to be having teachers work at that on a regular basis, even if we can be back in school. We still want them using Google Classroom and all those things, accessing the ways to submit the work, that kind of thing. We're going to be prepared to utilize this method if the state mandates it, or something even locally comes back that we think it needs to be changed, then we'll be ready for that particular situation. That's why I want to do a lot of the training up front, so we're not having to scramble again, and be prepared for whatever we may have to deal with. Any questions on my part before I send it to the rest of the team? Okay, Mr. Bickard, please.
All right, so elementary considerations, what we're going to do here is just walk you through my level. I would say the considerations we have to look at in order to make reopening inside the school work. So, and again, these are the major considerations that would have to be put into any of the plans that we would look at that would be in schools. So, of course, social distancing to the maximum extent possible, which would be the utilization of as many desks as possible, keeping distance. I think student wellness will be, a huge piece of what we need to do, especially, again, this is K to 5, with the process of washing hands as much as possible. Personal hygiene, how you sneeze, cough, what you're doing. I think constant teaching and repetition of that. One of the things we talked about a lot is anytime they enter the classroom, washing hands immediately. We're lucky in most of the K to 5 rooms, there are sinks in each of the rooms, so that's a key piece for us. I know that's such a huge piece. We actually referenced it as the scrub-in method that we use in the hospitals, where we would have kids doing that. Of course, there's lots of time with that, but that's a very important piece of all of this since day one. Modified use of the playground. We don't anticipate a lot of use of equipment immediately, but we want to. The idea is some kind of modified use to still get kids outside in a safe manner. Student movement throughout the building is a big conversation. I think a lot of parents, the question is, do we want to have specials the way we've had them, that part of school that especially elementary kids love? Yes, that is part of our planning. How that looks, whether it's in the specialist room or in the classroom, is something that needs to be determined, but we want that rich experience for kids that they get that opportunity. So movement throughout the building will be discussed. Extensive monitoring of student health, processes for entering, temperature checks, exiting the building, how we handle all of that will be a big piece of this. We will have to work through a plan of lunch in the cafeteria and classroom. We have done that many times with different events anyway, so we can, in conjunction with Mets, make that work. I think probably a big question would be, what does K to 5 learning look like if we have some kids out and some kids in? Mr. Gump and I have really had many conversations about this, and then how do we do that? I think in many ways, we can look at this as a means of doing something very unique and very new, but also I think we can make it happen. I think, there's going to be some financial pieces of this, timing of it all. We anticipate, as stated by Dr. Boyle, we're going to have to deal, especially at the elementary level, with liberal ending and beginning times to accommodate students arriving. So I think those times, those morning afternoon times, we can manage to do some of this hybrid learning. It won't be perfect, but I think we can begin to look at that. I think also we can utilize that time, because as Dr. Boyle referenced, we want to make sure every kindergartner, first and second grader has computers just like everybody else. So we're going to have to teach immediately, early on, how kids and parents can access Google Suite, whatever options we use, so we're prepared at any moment. So, I think that's a tough spot for us, but I think it's workable. I think, every day we're coming up with different ideas. Both Mr. Gump and I have had, our teams at our building levels very involved, which has been great. And then finally, I think there's going to be restricted areas in buildings. Unfortunately, we have a great game room here. where kids use for rewards. It's probably not accessible for a while until we're in a different stage. So there'll be some areas that just, it won't work, for the safety of everyone, but I think ultimately that's where we are elementary wise. Mr. Snower?
So at the middle school, and with all schools, the real goal here is we want to create as much of a sense of normalcy in school as we can for these students, while at the same time putting their health, safety, well-being at the top of our priority list. So how do you balance a normal school day while still making sure you're doing everything humanly possible to keep students and their families safe during this time? So, a lot of the same considerations that apply to the other schools are things that we were looking at the middle school. Obviously, how students move around the building is a top consideration. We want to make sure that we're keeping students spaced out in the hallways, that we're staggering how students are exiting classrooms, and when they do exit classrooms, that we're keeping minimum traffic flow in the hallways, and they're all kind of going in similar directions, so we don't have a lot of crossing of students going different ways. We're fortunate that we have 2 sets of stairs going to the 2nd floor, so one of them would be designated the upstairs, one would be designated the downstairs. And then looking at the hallways, the best consideration we'd be looking at is having directional flow on opposite sides of the hallway, and making sure that we're enforcing the way students are going in the middle school. The cafeteria is a concern and a consideration, and I think we're working through some really feasible plans for how we will minimize students in the cafeteria, using alternate locations throughout the school property for the lunches. Those of you that are familiar with the way the middle school schedule works, we do lunches by grade level. So, a traditional lunch at the middle school would be, anywhere between 180 and 200 students. Our cafeteria can hold well more than that. However, to socially distance them to the maximum extent we can, we want to limit that number in the cafeteria for students elsewhere in the school as well to eat. As Dr. Pickhart mentioned, distance learning for the teachers is a big consideration. Even if we are open and we have a full schedule of school going, we're well aware that there will probably be a number of students that aren't going to be in school, and we want to make sure that we're providing a robust education for them, that they're still part of our educational processes. Just like the peers that are in school, we want them to be a part of our school community, regardless of where they're getting school. So we want our teachers to be providing a excellent online learning process for them during the period of time while other students are in school. So we need to make sure that we are providing those opportunities for teachers to do the best job they can. Social distancing in the classrooms and other areas of the school to the maximum extent we can. We're looking at, of course, how we space desks in the classrooms, what furniture is not necessary in the classrooms so that we can spread out even more. Those are all things that are being considered, and we're doing a lot of measuring and counting and just trying to figure out what kind of numbers can we fit in with appropriate social distance in each classroom. And again, at the middle school, we have classrooms of all different sizes, so that's going to vary really room by room and grade by grade. As anybody knows who's ever dropped off or picked up a child at the middle school, it's somewhat of a nightmare under normal circumstances, and we're going to encourage additional parent drop-off and pickups to help reduce numbers on buses. That's a concern that we're going to have to work through, and I'm looking at alternate ways to get parents to line up and bring students in. As Dr. Boyle mentioned, we're going to have liberal arrival times to help spread some of that out. So we're not trying to cram all of the drop-offs into a very small window, and hopefully, again, we can avoid a lot of congestion. We do not want cars backed up on Route 11. That is a concern, and we want to make sure that we're keeping that moving. So, that also falls on me to just keep traffic flowing in the mornings and, leaning on our school resource officers to help keep that going as well. Our large groups, as was mentioned, that's a must on our plan. We must have considerations in effect for the common areas and the large group activities such as the chorus, the band, phys ed classes. So we're looking at how do we structure them, what does the curriculum look like, and how do we stagger students to make sure, again, that we are still giving them classes that they want, that they need, and also maintaining wellness of the students as our priority. We do not want students all in their, back to the hallways. We don't want students congregating at lockers and interacting in very close quarters with each other. So this is where staggering how students exit classrooms and come into the building and visit their lockers and reduce times during the day that they would have that opportunity to go to lockers to get items from them. And then, again, training students, training staff, reinforcing consistently proper hygiene and other activities that they can be taking to help maintain safety of themselves and not unintentionally spread some kind of germ or virus with each other. So again, hand washing, covering their face, how to cough, how to sneeze in the safest manner possible. And those are things that we're working very closely with the nurses to help develop trainings for students and reinforce with students. So those are all things at the middle school. And I can tell you there's an awful lot more than that, but these are some of the top ones that we're really looking at right now. Thank you. And Mr. Wynn.
So a lot of mine are the same, so I'm going to save everybody the time and not repeat every single one of them. But student wellness, the hand washing, I don't know how many of you have teenagers, but that's a challenge on a normal day to get them to wash themselves or wash hands and do those types of things. So that's going to be something we have to overemphasize at the high school level. Again, we are a little bit unique at the high school because we do have student and adult drivers, but we do have 2 different drop-off locations for both of those. Some of our teachers also park in the back of the building or the side of the building. So it is, again, something we have to consider about students coming into the building while adults are also coming into the building. With teachers there half an hour earlier this year, that shouldn't be an issue with the overlap of times. But again, we do have students who come into the building. Breakfast is usually not an issue at the high school. We have very few kids who take advantage of breakfast. But again, lunch, we do have some space at the high school. Some of the considerations we thought of, we have 3 lunches at the high school, so an average of 200 students per lunch. And one of the things we can do is we have an LGI, as many of you have been in, right across from the cafeteria. And then we also have the upper gym, which we thought maybe our Packers could go up to the upper gym and use that space. So you spread out in 3 spaces, 200 students in 3 rather large spaces. We really feel we can make that work at the high school. Again, we talked about hallways and stairways being marked for traffic flow. Large gatherings, we have the same issue. We're going to encourage our phys ed classes to go outside as much as possible. Our choir and band, they're large at the high school. We have 125 roughly of each, but they are very large spaces. They're over 2,000 square feet each space. But again, I would encourage those teachers to take the students outside as much as possible. Classroom social distancing, we're going to have to make some adjustments. Some spaces are larger than others at the high school. Some rooms are larger than others. But we're looking at ways to make those adjustments. And then just like Dave said, we do have students who visit lockers. One of the reasons we got away from backpacks at the high school was for safety issues in terms of what students might have in those backpacks, but that might be something we have to consider bringing back so we don't have students on top of each other in lockers. They are alphabetical, so whether we bring it back part of the alphabet one day and then the other part of the alphabet the other day, that's not going to help us because they're alphabetical. They would be next to each other at lockers. Like Dave said, we would need time for teachers to work on online instruction. So if they have students who are in the building and then students who are at home, that's why we thought about a 4-day on, 1 day off at the high school level and at the both secondary levels. Other considerations I did not mention on there are art classes, which was mentioned earlier by Dr. Boyle, but then also computer labs. We have some programs specific
Jeff Ryan, our Director of Technology, and I know Rich here they've tried to make the movement to a lot of those things going on Chromebooks. So like Photoshop, for instance, is a program specific, but there's an alternative that we could use for Chromebooks. So it would just be allowing teachers some time to get used to their programs, more about teaching the content, not about the program. So making adjustments to that. And Mrs. Willoughby, anything you want to add, high school level? Thanks, everybody.
In the maintenance department, some of the things that we're considering right now, actually the failure training continues. We usually have a class about every third month that will review new products or existing products that we just haven't been able to use at our school. Right now, we're looking at a lot of training with the disinfectants and sanitizing chemicals. There's a difference. There's a multitude of chemicals that they have. They have disinfectants that kill certain viruses and germs in 30 seconds, some 3 minutes, some 5 minutes kill time, some 10 minutes kill time. Some of the products we're using are hospital grade. We're looking at moving all of our disinfecting cleaning to the evening shifts, so they can basically kind of clean each room, they can spray the desks down, clean the desks, all the hand touch surfaces. We aren't adding additional staff members that we're going to probably in Liberty Valley and middle school, so we get better coverage at those two facilities. And basically, we're looking at a daytime schedule. This isn't cast in stone, but some of the things we're looking at is being able to, throughout the day, periodically disinfect touch surfaces, handrails, stairways. We're looking at possibly propping stairway doors open. That's something the fire marshal wouldn't approve, but these are strange on certain times. If we pop that open, we're going to have a whole lot less hands touching on the handles and so on and so forth, because there's no way that we can wipe down the handle after every student touches it. Okay, lost my train of thought. Where we go? All doors, entrances, and exits, AM and PM. We're looking at possibly an option would be that we open the front of the building and the back where the parents drop off and prop the doors open, so the students actually don't touch the doors. In order to do that, obviously, we need monitors. They're going to have to be placing the students and making sure it's only the students that are entering the building. It's just another challenge that we'll have to address that we're considering. We're going to need time to sanitize cafeteria tables. What we do with food service and chemicals we use is totally different than what we can do with disinfecting other parts of the building. So we're looking at how can we do that quickly and do a large volume that we can keep the tables, the chairs, et cetera, clean. Sanitizing wipes and dispensers, we're going to make them available throughout the cafeteria. We already have them. We're going to make them available in all the cafeterias of all the buildings. I know in the high school we have certain sanitizing wipes that we have. The little canister wipes that everybody likes to throw in the car and then they dry out, they're impossible to get. We have them on back order. We've got cases on back order. But we do have, it's a type of a bucket. It holds 150 up to 1,200 of these little wipes, and we put a sanitizing solution in there. So we're going to make them available at every cafeteria. We're looking into quart or half-gallon size hand sanitizer that we can put on a desk or a table throughout the building with a little pump on it, so that kids can at least try and maintain keeping their hands as clean as they possibly can. For the weight room, we're looking at the sanitizing dispensers. We use different chemicals in the weight rooms, athletic fields, and field houses. From what I've been reading, I'm looking at CDC guidelines. There's different things we can do with the HVAC systems. One of it is we can allow more outside air, but we have to balance outside air with the temperature and with the humidity. And we can't allow anybody to open the windows. So that's always something that people like to do. But as soon as you open the windows, it defeats the way these systems are designed. So we have to be real careful how much outside air, but that's a big recommendation from the CDC. We're talking about possibly leaving the classroom with doors open. It's a big safety issue. However, so is touching the door handle. So we're thinking maybe we leave the classroom doors open. After the students are in, then the teachers are allowed to close them if they wish, and then open them within the class. Now, you may still have a stray person coming in late, but it's not all 25 or 30 kids at one time. That will allow custodians to have some time to get around, like, some of the touch surfaces, et cetera. We're looking at temporarily eliminating the use of the stationary playground equipment in primary school in Liberty Valley. I know teachers might have to find something more creative for the kids to do, but we can't have them crawling all over the devices out there that we'll never be able to keep up and keep them clean and keep them straight down. So that's still a conversation that we're discussing. We've already met with the transportation contractors to discuss some ideas we had, some cleaners we had, some ways that they can mass clean the buses, not take a lot of time. And it's an ongoing process. These are just things that we're discussing now. Naturally, the more we learn from reading publications from CDC, learning things that I'm getting things constantly from other school districts, whether they're on how they're preparing failure, various different chemical companies telling us what they have and what we can do and what we can't do. And right now, we're fine tuning it, but time to move up. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, I'm gonna sit as well so you can hear me with the microphone. So all of this costs money, right? To do social distancing and to do hand sanitizing, provide theaters. And the government knew that we were going to be short funded with the unemployment rate. We're not going to get as much in earned income tax revenue, and real estate revenue might be delinquent instead of paid on time. So one of the funding sources that they are offering, and this is from the federal government, is an elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund. Now that's for $385,000 for our school. We do have to share that with our non-public school districts. So I'm not sure what that portion is going to be yet. And that funding can be, can supplant some of our expenditures in our budget. So they knew we were going to be short funded, so they're allowing it to be supplanted. The other funding from PCCG, which is $212,500, that funding has to be supplement. So it has to be stuff that we have not budgeted for. So combined, you think $598,000 is going to go pretty far buying all of these items, but I keep getting requests from the administrators and principals and sports for items that they need to continue operating safely for their students. So we're working through this. The grants have not been submitted yet. They're going to be submitted by June 30th, which I only have a couple of days, but we're working through getting closed, all that to put in the grants. And then the final source is we're going to have to fund some out of our general operating funds. There is no way we can support all that we need to out of just these two grants. So some of the ideas that we've come up with as a team to use the grant money for are salary and benefits for an intervention specialist and the additional custodian position that Ken has spoken about. PPE, of course, communication, the hotspots for areas that need additional internet service, and possibly an emergency communication system. If we had to get in contact with the schools and EMA, we know from prior drills that our communication is lacking in that area, so possibly looking at funding something in that area. Technology, Chromebooks, right now kindergarten does not have enough to send a one-to-one Chromebook home with their children, so we're looking at funding Chromebooks and data protection. So, so there's no data breach. Thermometers. Right now, we're looking at one for every classroom, but that's a discussion to have and what we can afford going forward. Cleaning supplies and equipment, that's going to be a huge one for Ken. Of course, he has to do all 4 schools. and all day long, so it's a lot more cleaning supplies than he has previously had or that we've had budgeted. So that's going to be a big part of the grant. Oh, athletic equipment. So we're trying to limit the sharing of equipment based on what was presented at last board meeting. So items like kitties, additional, so they're not wearing the same kitty sharing pennies 2 days in a row, maybe extra supplies that are needed, or PPE, or cleaning supplies, and we're getting information from the athletic trainers as well to help us decide what's best to use money for to be safe for our athletes as well. Student furnitures in the high school and middle school to promote social distancing. So we're all about collaboration right now and working together, and some of our classrooms are set up where they're sitting right next to each other because they're at a table, the same table. So we might have to buy new furniture to separate and social distance, because there would be no way we can have the same amount of tables in one room and still get all the kids that we have to get in there with social distancing. So we're looking at purchasing individual desks and social distance that way. Possible curriculum development, meaning I don't know how the teachers are going to teach their class plus 2 online, so there might have to be some portion of the funding going to that aspect of it. And then, of course, supplies for each building or art classes to reduce the sharing of the items. Now, I am still working on how to fit all this in, and plus some, I'm still getting requests into these 2 categories, but with knowing that it will be flow over through the general funds that will be paying for some.
All right, so our next steps is to invite the curriculum committee members to meet and discuss these things. I'm hoping to do that probably the week of July 6th. On July 8th, the CSIU superintendents are meeting to discuss somewhat of a regional plan, things that we can do similarly. Now, we recognize that the 17 districts are very different in many ways, but we want to work together to come up with things to have some consistency and help each other creating the plans. We want to then create the proposed plan and have the presentation for the school board, possibly having a special school board meeting for that if necessary, communicate with the families and the community, and then we would have the actual vote for a plan would be at the end of July. At that particularly registered, the school board meeting that's already in line, so that the board would have the proposed plan for minimally of a week, maybe 2, and then they would have their vote. So that's, the other thing that we're doing, and we've honestly started it, is some ordering processes, because all we keep hearing is if you don't order now, you're not going to get it. So we're trying to be very proactive with that. Some other areas that we need to look at include food service, where we're going to be disposable or not, traffic, the middle school, primary school, the traffic circles, how the buses come in and out, the timing, all those wonderful things. Do we really need to revise the calendar? And I think that's something we really want to look at, just for the option of having the teachers come a little earlier for that professional development. We have to really keep our concern for our high-risk staff and students, for that matter. Staff training, which I just mentioned with the calendar. And then we want to make sure that we are have a positive or presumptive positive case protocol that addresses both exclusion if somebody is thought to have COVID, and readmittance procedures, so that we're feeling safe as far as anything that happens in that realm. Are there any questions? It took a little longer than planned, but I think it's all real pertinent information.
One question I have, that you wanted to meet with the curriculum committee with the July 6th. After that meeting, do you want us to set a date for?
For a special meeting.
Do you want a special meeting, or does it need to be, do you want it to be just an executive session? Do you want it to be a special meeting so the public also has the information that we would be voting on?
It would, it's most appropriate for it to be a special meeting, a public meeting. It wouldn't be an executive session.
So do you want us to try and set a date for tonight, like for the week of July 13th, which is the week before our regular meeting, so that we know now?
That would be a good idea.
Does anybody have?
Do you think we'll know that quickly? I only ask because if we're meeting on the week of the 6th, but let's say we don't get together until the 9th. Do you want to have any other committee meetings before you take your vote, like a finance committee meeting or anything else? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I really see where you're coming from. My only thing is we're in July.
But the
And if we're going to
22nd.
start school, our next school board meeting after July 22nd would not be till the end of August. So we almost would have to, I know it seems like it's a quick move, but I would think we'd almost have to meet a special meeting with some kind of information.
Additionally, though, I'm concerned that the community and parents need to have a timeline sooner than later. That's my concern. Teachers need to plan, parents need to prepare, the buildings need to be gotten ready as far as movement, so we really need to have a plan sooner than later. And I'm looking at the 22nd of July as being a little bit later. We could probably, almost pushing it to the 29th is really too late, because August, it's only a couple weeks until we start school.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, the calendar, the only,
Do
if
you
we,
think you can approve it the 22nd during the regular meeting, or do you think we'll be ready to do it earlier with everybody?
My thought was we give it to you the 15th, we tweak things. If we give it to you the 15th, we can still have meetings with finance committee that week or the week after. And then, but that gives you the opportunity to have what you need so that you can make that decision.
it's a hard time, but I totally, if we could have, instead of a special meeting, we could present it. What we would be presenting at a special meeting on the 22nd, but then we'd have to turn around to go to the 29th. We're really cutting into when, you know what I mean, for schools to go back.
So with the 15th, maybe I'm just not understanding Dr. Will. So on the 15th, are you proposing like you would communicate with the public that this is what we're looking to adopt? Would you want to provide any feedback to them to adopt the plan on the 22nd? Is that what I'm
Correct.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, when we adopted on the 15th, I mean, we'd have to have.
That was my worry, is that it was very tight, a little especially to adopt it. But it sounds.
It's not to adopt it. That's why I gave you this rundown of what we've been doing. Then we want to have that plan for you. It sounds like a little short, but we do have a lot of stuff started, nothing concrete. But by the 15th, I expect to be concrete, and then we can tweak it the way we need to, and then propose the final plan on the 22nd.
That would be the public.
Right, yeah, we feedback.
It would both the public and the board time to, if they have any questions, still the 22nd. Is the 15th a good date with board members? We would be meeting both.
Okay, the 15th would be a special meeting, the presentation of the actual plan as proposed, and then time for feedback, and then the 22nd would be the vote.
I'm fine with that.
I didn't, that doesn't coincide with CSIU. Or you don't,
I have to balance with one.
I know.
There are only so many weeks in a month.
I know. Is
Thank you. Mrs. Fish just said she's okay with the 15th as well. And I always.
That's okay.
are you, Well, we can give you the information.
I'll make sure you get the information.
Okay. So let's plan on a special meeting for July 15th. Okay. We'll make sure that that gets advertised and. Okay, sorry, that was just one question.
So are we gonna have a curriculum meeting before that,
Yes,
before the 16th?
right, is there any dates, Bob? I'll be sending out a doodle, okay, so tomorrow I'll handle that.
Okay, is there any other concerns for leadership in what they presented this evening?
No, but I'd like to just extend, to thank Dr. Boyle and the administrative team and their subsequent teams for the continued focus and the commitment to these challenging times. And you can see just in this brief session that there's been a lot of hard work that's gone in, a lot of collaboration, and I've heard the common theme, which is most important, that the value and the focus we put on the safety of all of our kids in all of our schools continues to be at the front of everybody's list, and I just commend everybody for all those sacrifices and everything we're doing to keep going in that direction. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, at this time, we have the consent agenda items. They are all listed. I don't know if everybody has that. What they are: 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 12.6, 12.7, 12.8, 13.1, and 13.2. Are there any items that anyone wishes to have removed at this time of the consent agenda items?
I'd like to pull out item number 12.5.
Okay. Any other? I would like to pull 12.3 so that we can have further discussion on that and have them go to the next agenda next month. Any other? Do I have a motion to go ahead and approve consent agenda items except 12.3 and 12.5?
Well, when it comes to those two, that.
Okay. Next, we have school property and supplies. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr. Tatu,
Yes.
Dr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yes. Mr. Riker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
At this time, we have school property and supplies. Do I have a motion to table item 12.3 and 12.5? Both of them, Daryl?
Both.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Karen?
Dr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon, Dr. Gursky. Yes. Mr. Riker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yeah.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Dr. Tatu,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yeah. Your school property and supplies, we have several items, 7.1 through 7.11. Is there any discussion on any of those items? motion to approve 7.1 through 7.11.
I motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mary, is that what you were all saying?
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yeah. Mr. Riker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Dr. Pikachu,
Yes.
Dr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Under athletics and activities, we have item 8.1, the hiring of boys and girls basketball coaches. Do I have a motion to approve the coaches?
I motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jen. Mary?
Jen second, right? And who first?
Me.
Dr. Gursky. Yeah. Mr. Riker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Dr. Pikachu,
Yes.
Dr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon, Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. At this time, we have an addendum under athletics. It's 8.2, and I apologize because we had discussed this last board meeting after passing the, approving the coaches and such. But I forgot, Mr. Beard, Attorney Beard sent us this addendum, and I forgot to have it put on the agenda. So I'll read this. It's a motion to approve the fall sports coaches and activities with the clear understanding that in the event we would have a resurgence of COVID-19 or some other similar situated contagious disease outbreak that would otherwise prevent the opening of school or impact fall sports to the point that they could no longer continue, all those who occupy fall sports coaching positions would be paid a prorated portion of their salary for any and all work completed up to the time of the actual or contemplated closure of school and or all sports schedule. Do I have a motion to add this 8.2 to our agenda? We first have to have a motion for the addendum.
I motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Now, do I have a motion to approve this addendum? Or is there any discussion?
Can we have discussion?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any discussion?
My question is just around, if this is for fall sports or if this is something for the school year and the nature of just the language.
Okay, I think at this time it's just for fall sports. However, when we, if school stays in session and we go to approving the winter sports coaches, and then this would have to be also part of their, so it would be for each season as we go through the year, we would have to have this.
Can we just make it so it says for the academic 2020 to 2021 school year and do it once?
Mr. Beardhart?
Am I on?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't necessarily think there's an issue precluding you from going in that direction if you want to just have it be equitable across the board rather than saying, you know, we have fall coaches who have been approved. I don't know if you're going to have winter sports and then spring that all need to be subsequently approved. I think when that language was drafted, it was just contemplating that we only have these coaches in their positions, you know, with their contracts approved at this point. And that's why it was just the fall. You know, if you guys want to take that action now to extend that to the entire school year for the, you know, run the gamut of all your seasons and just say, if this becomes a problem, whether it be fall, winter, or spring, what have you, it would then be subsequently.
Same protocol.
So it would be to approve the 2021 sports coaches and activities.
I understand the concept, but
Okay,
I don't know if I understand the damage. I'm not in disagreement there.
when we wrote our close in March, we had to pay all the spring coaches as if they participated the entire spring season, which they did. So, and that was through Act 13 that had to be done. But this is so that it doesn't happen, so that we're not, if they were only in school 2 weeks and fall sports done, this protects us so that we do not have to pay their full salary.
Yeah, no, I get that proposal. I'm just curious why.
I mean, I don't care either way, but I just think it's easy just to apply it to the year.
And it makes sense to be applicable because what I keep hearing is the potential for November and December, which is then winter months, may come around where we have to do something for our school.
And if we could shut down, we could be shut down for the spring.
Yeah, it could not, but this way, we're covering the entire year instead of coming at the beginning of every sports season, we're just taking care of it all now.
Yeah, if we would put that out, it would make not look like we're picking on fall sports, like that we're. Right, it's straight across the board. Should we reword it to say, motion to approve the 2021 sports coaches and activities? And then one further down through it says, or impact fall sports, we should just say the 2021 sports and activities.
That includes like band and the other things that we have
Required.
Well,
And then-
extracurriculars,
And then there's
should
another thing.
also include the clubs.
Right.
They should have that too.
Exactly, and then it goes one down again, and it says all those who occupy fall sports, we should make that 2021.
Bobby, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah,
go ahead.
certainly.
Is this something that we should also be saying in lieu of Act 13? Is there a possibility that they could institute Act 13 again?
I mean, I can comment, I can comment on that. I mean, when you guys went through this with your spring coaches and your spring activities, advisors, and that payment was kind of predicated on the fact that, and the recommendation to go through with those payments was predicated on the fact that Act 13 was approved and that funding was going to be there. So that's why, that recommendation came that way. Here, it's so uncertain. Is there a possibility, I believe was your question? Yes, there is a possibility that could be renewed or revamped or revisited from the legislature. But at this time, we have no means of telling whether that's going to be a certainty or not.
So
I just would hate to see us, if we do have something along that line, where we are told we have to, or we have funding to pay them, then we should be paying.
the last line and say of the lesson or guidance comes from state agencies, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could, look at adding some sort of catch-all that says, if applicable, I mean, if it comes to fruition, then, that would be contingent upon any type of legislative enactment.
That was the last one.
Bobby's working on it.
One other thing, when we use the term prorated, and we talk to all, in all contexts, is that clear enough? Just to use that term here? We say prorated, and then we talked about these different entities, is that structurally clear enough? The dates, the date, is that clear what that means? So all this, what is that?
It's prorated for the amount of time that they were working. So that although it's different for different number of weeks in a sport, it's specific to the sport.
I'm not familiar with all the structure when
Right.
it's officially started, when it's, the extra times and you start early and you do the other things. That doesn't need clarity, that thing is prorated, it's going to be just structured off of
So,
contract or
well, good point, Chris. Our coaches that are having our voluntary workouts now are soccer and football, and they go, are they getting paid now? Is that part of their?
that's kind of what we get.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah, like, 'cause here's my saying is, say, the football team and the soccer team, and then the other team started practice Monday. We go, we get in the third week of the season, we're done. They only give you 3 weeks, and they get all the special act back in June. And is their salary split up from June 22nd to September 19th, or is it from August 11th when football starts and soccer starts officially?
The practices and their and the coaches like the football, do they get paid from when they started practices or when do they get paid from?
So they get paid based on the start. You gotta have like fall sports season. Football starts on the 10th of August, and then on the 17th. Also, August 10th will be the official start. So that's the official start. Football the 17th. Or historically, we paid them by per week based on their experience this season. So however long they would get into the season, whether it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks, he needs to prorate salary because they have a weekly salary that they need. The things in the summer are voluntary workouts. The athletes come and, the coaches come and they volunteer to get time because they know how it's structured.
Is that the salary schedule?
Exactly, the matrix. This is something that we can table for now, discussing more.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, it officially doesn't start until August 10th. Yeah, excuse me, but it doesn't start until August 10th. I'm sure we can do it until the 16th or the 20th.
Okay, here's what she gave me. Motion to approve the 2021 sports coaches and activities with the clear understanding that in the event we would have a resurgence of COVID-19 or some other similar situated contagious disease outbreak that would otherwise prevent the opening of school or impact 2021 sports and activities to the point that they could no longer continue all those occupied 2021 sports.
Yeah, we can just table it.
Should we table it and
Yeah,
have
let's
a
table it.
clear
Let's table it.
Let's table it, we can get a real nice.
We need a motion.
to table?
Make a motion to table.
Second.
Yeah, we did.
You didn't vote on it.
We did
For
vote
the
on it.
addendum, we did, but not.
Right.
No, you didn't vote on adding motion to the agenda.
So we're okay.
Oh, no, we weren't in discussion yet,
Right.
right? Okay, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take that right out.
okay, so we'll make sure that this is on the July 22nd.
Right, and what we can do, if we can work, our next step, committee meeting, we can try to get this language a little better spelled out, and then
Sounds good.
we can forward it to you.
We'll send it back to, your
Yes.
associate.
Okay.
I'll take care of it.
Even better idea.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Sorry about that.
We have nothing under curriculum and management, nothing under school community relations. Under finance, we have several items under finance. 11.1 is just the reports, there's no motion for that. 11.2 are bills for payment. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Thank you. Karen?
Mr. Riker,
Hey.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Dr. Tachu,
Yes.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky,
Abstain.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yeah. Okay, Bobby, would you like us to do each motion separately? And also, does anyone have any questions or concerns with
I don't mind if you group them. I will just make a comment that the final 2021 budget changed by, I think it was $28. It was just a calculation for the Homestead Farmstead Act. So there is no change. And again, we're still submitting the budget as no tax increase to the taxpayers. And then the resolutions that are going along with it is just the tax resolution saying what our millage rate is, the homestead farmstead exclusion that shows how much of a reduction in the tax bill that the taxpayers will get if they're approved for homestead and farmstead through the county, and the real estate tax audit services is the same amount as last year, and then the audit service increased $3,575 over last year, which is reasonable for the services we get. We're recommending not increasing lunch prices, especially with the economy the way it is, and Met's contract gave us a guaranteed $80,000 profit. However, with COVID, we're going to have to buy additional expenses from the grant or general fund, so that $80,000 is not a profit to food service, and food service is still at a loss fiscally, so we needed to do the price equity tool, which is included in your packet. So the whole program, over the many years we've had it, is still at a loss, and that's why we have to do that tool to look at lunch prices every year. The tuition rates are produced by PDE, so you're just approving those as directed by PDE. The district insurance is all of our liability insurance and our general insurance, auto insurance, all of that, and our workers' compensation insurance is next. It did increase by $7,000, but we saved $36,000 last year for going out for quotes. So a little increase over the 1 year isn't bad, and we had a really bad year one year for claims. So that's why it's increasing. And then the budget transfers are as normal.
I'm surprised the tuition rate is only that, like, the difference is less than $24.
She's talking about from elementary to secondary.
Because I know in the past, there was much bigger spread than that.
Yep.
I was shocked when I saw that. Anybody have any questions for Bobby, or what? How do you want to vote on these? You want to do them individually, 11.3, 1 through 13, or as a group?
I suggest that we do as a group.
Okay. So do I have a motion for 11.3 through 11.13?
Motion for
Second.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yep.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Dr. Tachu,
Yes.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yes. Mr. Riker,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Okay, under personnel, we, did. Okay, so 12.1 through 12.8 were all consent agenda, except the 12.3 and the 12.5, which we pulled. So at this time, do I have a motion to table them until, can you do that? Oh, you want me to do that? 12.8. Oh, I thought you told me I had to do a table again. We did it. All right. Okay. So 12.7, that was done, 8 is done. 9. 12.9 is a personnel transfer. So our motion to accept. Second. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Dr. Tatu.
Yes.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yes. Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mrs. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Edney.
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the new middle school assistant principal, which is 12.10?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Dr. Tatu.
Yes.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon. Dr. Gursky. Yes. Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mrs. Fish.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mrs. Edney.
Yes.
And Mr. Snover, would you please introduce your new assistant?
Sure. I'm very, very happy to introduce Ms. Jess Knoll, who brings kind of energy and excitement to the middle school. We're really excited to have her at the middle school and on the administrative team. And really the only loss in this whole deal is to Dr. Bickhart in the primary school, who's losing an excellent art teacher. But we're certainly gaining a wonderful new administrator. So welcome, Jess.
Or just having to say?
I've never
All right,
lost a word.
we have 12
But
point,
that's a difference.
on 12.11 is a new hire for Mike Shiflett as 7th grade social studies teacher. We have a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion. Dr. Tatu.
Yes.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yeah. Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mrs. Fish.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Edney.
Yes. Is Mr. Shiflett here tonight?
He's not.
Okay. 12.12 is a new hire for a music teacher, music band at the middle school. I have a motion to approve 12.12.
Dr. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Yeah. Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mrs. Fish.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Dr. Tatu.
Yes.
Mrs. Edney.
Yes. Is our new music? No.
He's not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to policy and insurance. 13.1 and 13.2 with the consent agenda items. Do item 13.3.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Dr. Tachi.
Yes.
Dr. Marks. Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Okay, 13.4 is, do I have a motion to approve 13.4? Or any discussion on 13?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Gursky.
Yes.
Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mrs. Tisch.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Dr. Tachi.
Yes.
Dr. Marks. Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. This time we have nothing under transportation. Under board concerns and items for next meeting agenda, we will put 12.3, 12.5, both on that agenda, and also 8.2. Remember, July 15th, we will hold a special meeting, and Dr. Boyle will get in contact with the curriculum committee as far as their meeting the week of the 6th. Does anyone have anything else? This time?
I would just like to say again that it would be good to have, in whatever plan we approve, whatever those models are, some components that address what Amy will be presented. So just as a reminder to the team when you bring that, I would like to see how we're addressing that.
Right, and that was one of the things I put in all phases, that we would address social emotional. So yes.
Okay, if anyone thinks of something, please let me know. If you can let me know at least a week before a meeting, I will put it out so that everybody on the board is aware that it will be something to discuss or placed on the agenda. At this time, do we have any public comment?
Anyone online with Zoom, raise your hand if you want to make a comment. There's no one on Zoom that's making a comment.
Thank you. No public comment. Does anyone on the board have any additional comments? Okay, with none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.